She was 7 months pregnant, tied to a concrete floor, facing a Russian mobster's gun. He expected her to beg and cry, so he could completely break her mafia boss husband. Instead, this fearless lawyer wife looked the mobster dead in the eye and asked if she loved her unborn child enough to destroy him before the baby arrived. When her husband finally busted down those warehouse doors, he didn't bring a street gang. He brought federal agents to execute her genius master plan. The night Lucas Santoro almost lost me, New York was covered in rain, and I was 7 months pregnant, barefoot on a cold concrete floor, with my wrist tied in front of me and my wedding ring cutting into my swollen finger. The warehouse smelled of rust, river water, old gasoline, wet wood, and fear. There were no windows, only corrugated metal walls, a leaking roof, and one yellow bulb swinging above my head like a tired eye. Somewhere outside, beyond the loading doors, I could hear this Hudson moving in the dark, slow, heavy, patient. It sounded like breathing. My baby moved beneath my palm, a small roll of life inside a world that had suddenly become too cruel, too loud, too close. I kept one hand on my stomach. I kept the other around the little gold cross at my throat. It had belonged to my grandmother, Nona Rosa. She used to tell me that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was knowing fear had entered the room and refusing to give it the best chair. So I sat still. I breathed slowly. I refused to let the men around me see the full shape of my terror. Victor Koff stood in front of me, with a gun in his hand and a smile that did not belong to a human being. He was Russian, powerful, patient, and cold in the way deep water is cold. He had built his influence through ports, shipping companies, private security contracts, corrupted officials, frightened workers, and the kind of silence people buy when they are too afraid to speak. He wanted me frightened. He wanted me crying. He wanted me begging for my husband. But I had learned something in the months since I first met Lucas Santoro. Men who feed on fear are always disappointed when you make them work for it. Victor leaned closer. His coat smelled of expensive wool and tobacco. "Tell me, Mrs. Santoro," he said, his voice soft, almost kind. "Do you think your husband loves you enough to give up his empire?" I looked at him. My cheek still burned from where one of his men had struck me earlier. My feet were numb against the concrete. My lower back ached with the cruel pressure of pregnancy and terror. My daughter kicked again, hard enough to make me wince. Victor saw it. His eyes moved to my stomach. That was when the fear inside me changed into something sharper, something cleaner. "You are asking the wrong question," I said. Victor's smile faded a little. "Then what is the right question?" I lifted my chin. "The right question is whether I love my child enough to destroy you before he gets here." He stared at me for 1 second. The warehouse went quiet. Even the young guard by the door stopped shifting his weight. Then far away, tires screamed against wet pavement. A door slammed, men shouted. The sound rolled through the warehouse, like thunder coming down the river. Victor turned his head. I closed my eyes. Not because I was relieved. Relief was for women whose husbands were not dangerous enough to burn the whole city to save them. I closed my eyes because the past 7 months of my life had finally caught up with me. Bellinata, the white marble tables, the law books in my backpack, the smell of garlic, basil, expensive wine, polished silver, and rich men's cologne. The old couple from Ohio who had smiled when I spoke Italian. The dark-haired man at table 7 who had stopped eating, watched me like a judge, and said 4 words that changed my life forever. I want her back then. I was still Luna Rossi. I was 24 years old. I was poor, tired, proud, and stubborn enough to believe I could build my future, one double shift at a time. I was in my 2nd year of law school, living in a tiny studio apartment with a broken heater and one window that faced a brick wall. My bed folded into the wall. My desk wobbled if I leaned on it too hard. My refrigerator made a sound like it was praying for death. But everything in that apartment was mine. Every chair, every cheap plate, every stack of textbooks, every cup with a crack in the handle, every envelope of cash hidden in the bottom drawer. I had paid for all of it with sore feet, late nights, missed meals, and tips folded into envelopes marked rent, tuition, groceries, and emergency. My father worked construction. His hands were permanently rough, like the city had carved itself into his palms. His knees hurt every winter, but he said pain was just weather inside the bones. My mother cleaned houses for families who sometimes left more money on a bathroom counter than she made in a day. She never stole, not even a coin. Not even when the people she worked for forgot. She was a person and spoke around her, like she was part of the furniture. They never complained in front of me. That was their love language. Silence. Sacrifice food on the stove. A text that said, "You studied today. Good girl." They had come to America believing hard work was a bridge. I was supposed to be the one who crossed it. So I studied. I served. I smiled when wealthy customers spoke to me like I had no past. No intelligence, no parents. No dreams. I memorized tort law while carrying plates of osso buco. I reviewed constitutional law on the subway at 1 a.m. I learned contract doctrine with my feet, soaking in a plastic tub full of hot water, because my shoes were cheap and my shift had been long. I learned to sleep in pieces. 3 hours here, 40 minutes there, 10 minutes with my face pressed against a casebook before my alarm dragged me back into the world. My classmates talked about internships, clerkships, networking receptions, and summer homes. I talked to no one about how often I chose between buying a casebook and buying real food. Pride is not always noble. Sometimes pride is just hunger with its back straight. At Bellinata, I kept myself small. That was part of the job. The restaurant was expensive. The kind of place where politicians, businessmen, judges, and old money families ate behind soft lighting and heavy curtains. The chandeliers glowed like trapped suns. Wine glasses were polished until they almost vanished in your hand. Chef Marco shouted in Italian from the kitchen, cursing tomatoes, waiters, delivery drivers, and God with equal passion. I understood every word, but I pretended not to. Speaking Italian would make me noticeable, educated, different, and in rooms like that, being noticed by the wrong person could cost you more than being ignored. So I poured wine. I laughed softly. I kept my accent flat. I let customers assume I was just another waitress, working her way through something they did not care to ask about. Then one Friday night, everything slipped. An elderly couple sat in my section. They were sweet, nervous. The wife wore pearls and a soft blue cardigan. The husband kept mispronouncing Italian words with such innocent confidence that I wanted to protect him from every waiter within hearing distance. They had just returned from Tuscany, and the woman tried to ask her husband in broken Italian whether he wanted more bread. She used the wrong verb, completely wrong, but her face was so hopeful that I forgot myself. I answered her in Italian, real Italian, the Italian of my grandmother's kitchen, the language of flour-dusted hands, simmering sauce, Sunday afternoons, and stories about a village outside Florence where church bells marked every grief and every celebration. The couple lit up. The woman grabbed my hand. The husband asked questions. For 5 minutes, I was not invisible. I told them about Nonna Rosa, about Olive Grove's old stone towers, a bakery that used to open before sunrise, and how she believed basil should be torn by hand and never chopped because food could taste impatience. They laughed. I laughed. My shoulders dropped. The weight of the night lifted, and at table 7, Luca Santoro stopped eating. I felt his attention before I saw him. Some looks brush against you, some looks weigh you. His did both. When I turned, his fork hovered above his plate. His dark eyes followed me, with a stillness that made my skin tighten. He was beautiful in a way that did not feel safe. Not soft, not warm, beautiful like a sharpened blade laid on black velvet. His suit was charcoal, perfectly cut. His hair was dark and swept back. His face was controlled, all angles and restraint. The man across from him, Liam, said something I could not hear. Lucas did not look away from me, he said, quietly but clearly. I want her. I should have been angry first. I was angry later, but first came fear. Not panic, not yet, just a cold thread down my spine. I had been noticed, not by a drunk customer, not by a bored husband, not by some young banker trying to impress his friends, by him. A man who looked as if wanting something, and having it had always been the same sentence in his life. I went into the kitchen and gripped the steel prep counter until the chill steadied my hands. Jessica, one of the other servers, asked if I was okay. I told her I was tired. Everyone believed tired. Tired explained everything in people like us. The rest of the shift became strange. I carried plates. I refilled water. I recommended wines. And every time I entered the dining room, I felt him. He did not wave me over. He did not flirt. He did not smile. He simply watched. That was worse. Rich men sometimes noticed waitresses. Usually they forgot us before dessert. Lucas looked like a man who forgot nothing. At midnight, I changed into jeans and a sweater in the employee bathroom. My feet throbbed. My back ached. My backpack felt like it was full of stones. I walked past the front windows and saw tables 7 empty. Relief came, but thinly. It did not last. On the subway platform, I had the ridiculous feeling someone was behind me. No one was, least no one I could see. Still, I stood with my back to a column until the train came. In my apartment, I tried to study contracts. The words blurred. Consideration. Capacity, duress. The page seemed to mock me. Duress. I heard his voice again. I want her the next day. I told myself I was being dramatic. Wealthy men were not supernatural. Dangerous-looking men still paid bills. Got bored and moved on. I went to class. Professor Williams lectured about federalism. I took notes with my usual precision, but my mind kept drifting back to Lucas. After class, I called my mother from the law library. She told me my father's knees were hurting again, but he refused to see a doctor because the job site was behind schedule. She asked if I was eating. I lied and said yes. I did not tell her about Table 7. What could I say? A man looked at me like a storm warning. That evening, Bellinata was busy. Table 7 was occupied by a birthday party. I felt foolish for being relieved. I was assigned to the north section, far from where Lucas S. had sat the night before. I let myself breathe, then I saw him at Table 3, in my section alone, reading a document, waiting. My hands trembled around the water pitcher, just once, before I forced them still. "Good evening," I said, when I reached him. "Can I get you anything else tonight?" He set down his pen. "I wanted to compliment your Italian." "Thank you, sir. Your accent is Tuscan." I froze. My grandmother was from near Florence. "I know." That made me look at him. "You know," his mouth curved slightly. I made an educated guess. It did not feel like a guess. Nothing about Lucas felt like guessing. Then he extended his hand. "Lucas Santoro." I shook it because refusing would have been strange. His hand was warm, controlled. "Luna Rossi," I said. "I know that too." This time the chill was immediate. "How I own Bellinata." The world narrowed around those words. Owner, employer, paycheck, rent, tuition. The man who had said I want her was not just a customer. He was the person who could remove the floor from under my life, with one phone call. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Santoro." I managed. "Lucas," he said. "I have a proposition for you." His tone was pleasant. That made it worse. Men like Lucas did not need to threaten loudly. They could make opportunity feel like a locked room. He told me to meet him after my shift at a cafe 2 blocks away. I said I had class early. He said it would not take long. I should have said no. I did not. Poverty teaches politeness to the people who can least afford it. At 12:30, I walked into Dolce Vita with a knot in my stomach. Lucas sat in the corner with 2 espressos. He had changed into a black sweater and dark jeans. Without the suit, he looked younger, more approachable, more dangerous somehow. Like the polished mask had been removed, and the predator underneath trusted me enough to see it. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You are my employer," I answered. "When you request a meeting, it feels work-related," he smiled. "It is." He offered me a job as his personal assistant. Triple my salary, health insurance, a transportation allowance, tuition covered through a private scholarship, transfer to the evening law program, where professors were practicing, attorneys and federal judges. It was in every practical sense. The answer to every prayer I had been too proud to say out loud. No more choosing between groceries and books. No more falling asleep over legal briefs. No more worrying that one emergency would destroy everything my parents had sacrificed for. That was how I knew it was dangerous. The sweetest traps are built from your deepest needs. "Why me?" I asked. "You could hire anyone." "I could hire experience," he said. "I cannot hire what I saw last night. A waitress speaking Italian, a woman who became herself for 5 minutes, and made everyone near her want to listen." I looked away because that struck too close. What exactly would I do? Scheduling, correspondence, translation when needed, attending meetings, learning how my businesses operate, restaurants, among other things. There it was, a shadow under the words. "I need time to think," I said. "Of course." He placed a business card on the table. Then he added, "Bellinata is closing for renovations next week. Staff will be laid off. I will provide references." The espresso in my stomach turned to acid. "That is convenient. It is true. And if I say no, then you say no." He said it like he believed himself. But the room had already changed. My job gone, my school rearranged, my future placed in his hand, and offered back to me, as if it had always belonged there. I went home that night and did not sleep. I looked at my apartment with its chipped mug, old radiator, and law books stacked on the floor. It was poor, it was honest. It was mine, but honest things break too. At dawn, I called my mother. She told me my father had skipped breakfast because his knees hurt, and he did not want her to notice. I stared at the wall while she spoke. Love can make cowards of us. It can also make us practical. The next night, I walked up to Lucas' table and said, "I will take the position." His smile was small. "Excellent choice. I did not say I trusted you. I did not ask you to, and I do not belong to you." He leaned back, eyes fixed on mine. Not yet. I should have hated him for that. I did. But hatred is not always simple when fear and fascination stand beside it. The following morning, I entered Santoro Group's midtown offices wearing my best blouse and a skirt I had bought second-hand, but tailored myself. The building lobby was marble, brass glass and men with earpieces. The receptionist already knew my name. That unsettled me more than it should have. on the 32nd floor. I met Margaret. She was in her 50s, silver-haired, precise, and calm in the way of women who have seen enough violence to stop wasting energy on surprise. Mr. Santoro is in meetings, she said. I will train you. In what? I asked. She looked at me for a moment. How to survive being useful. That was my first lesson. The morning was ordinary enough to almost comfort me. Passwords, calendar systems, filing rules, names of department heads, expense procedures. Then Margaret showed me a locked cabinet with color-coded folders and said, "You do not open red files unless Mr. Santoro tells you." What are red files? The kind you do not open unless Mr. Santoro tells you. That was my second lesson. At noon, Lucas took me to lunch with Salvatore Benedetti, an old family friend from Palermo. Salvatore was elderly, elegant, and soft-spoken. His hands were delicate. His eyes were not. The conversation began with food imports, olive oil, cured meats, and customs issues. It moved to shipping delays, union problems, storage facilities, payments, respect. The words were legal. The meaning underneath them was as not. I listened. I understood enough. More than Lucas expected. Maybe, when Salvatore switched to Sicilian dialect. I lost pieces but caught others. La Famiglia, territory, cough tribute. My pen moved across the page, taking notes that said nothing dangerous, and remembered everything. Near the end, Salvatore tested me. Your assistant understands more than she says. He told Lucas in Italian. That can be a problem. I looked at him and answered in Italian before Lucas could. Only if I speak before I understand. Salvatore smiled slowly. Lucas looked at me with something like surprise, then pride. That look warmed me, and I hated myself for it. After lunch in the back of Lucas' car, I said, "You are not just a restaurant owner, no. The red files are not restaurant files. No, and this job is not only a job." He turned toward me. "No, you should have told me. Would you have accepted? No. Then you understand why I did not. Brutal, honest, unforgivable. That was Lucas. I thought about leaving that very day. I truly did, but by then, my school transfer had been approved. My tuition was covered. Bellinata was closing. My parents had called, excited that maybe I could finally sleep more. I was already inside the web, not trapped yet, but tangled. There is a difference, and it matters. Over the next weeks, I learned the shape of Lucas' world. It had clean surfaces and hidden rooms. Santoro Group owned restaurants, construction companies, real estate, shipping interests, and import businesses. Some were legitimate, some were too carefully legitimate. Money moved through places where money should not move so smoothly. Men visited without appointments. Calls ended when I entered. Margaret taught me which names to write down and which names to remember without paper. Curiosity is not a sin, she told me one afternoon. But in this building, curiosity without discipline is suicide. Are you trying to scare me? I asked. No, she said. I am trying to keep you alive long enough to decide who you are. That sentence stayed with me, because I did not know who I was becoming. At night, I attended law classes with people who complained about workload and interviews and cold coffee. I wanted to shake them. I wanted to say, do you know how clean your stress is? Do you know what a privilege it is to worry only about grades? Then I felt ashamed for thinking it. Everyone carries weight. Pain is not a contest. But loneliness made me unkind in my own head. I could not tell my classmates that my employer might be part of an organized criminal network. I could not tell my parents that my new office had more security than a courthouse. I could not tell myself. I was still the same Luna who had wiped marble tables and believed the law was a clean line between good and bad. The line was already blurring. The first gala came 2 weeks later. Lucas said I needed formal clothes. A personal shopper arrived at my apartment with dresses worth more than my car. If I had owned a car, I chose a midnight blue gown because it looked elegant without looking like surrender. When I saw myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Polished hair, bare shoulders, diamonds borrowed from a safe. The gold cross still at my throat because I refused to remove the last visible proof of who I had been before Lucas. The gala was at the Metropolitan Museum. Politicians, judges, donors, businessmen and old families moved beneath high ceilings and soft lights, speaking in polished voices about charity while negotiating power with their eyes. Lucas placed a hand on my waist as we entered. Stay close, he said. Why? Because people know about you now. What do they know? Enough to be curious. And that makes me unsafe. Curiosity makes everyone unsafe. He introduced me as his associate. Some people smiled warmly. Some measured me. Some dismissed me until I spoke. Then they listened. That was one of the first gifts my grandmother had given me without knowing it. Language opens rooms money cannot enter alone. I spoke Italian with an ambassador's wife, French with a donor who had underestimated me, legal theory with a federal judge who seemed amused that Lucas Santoros' new associate could cite precedent better than half the attorneys in his courtroom. I felt Lucas watching. I felt him noticing other people notice me. That should have made me proud. Instead, it made me nervous. Then Sofia Benedetti approached. She wore emerald silk and the expression of a woman, trained from birth to smile like a knife. "Lucas," she said, kissing both his cheeks. "You did not tell me you were bringing someone." "Sophia," Lucas said, voice neutral. "Luna Rossi," her eyes swept over me. Dress, hair, shoes, cross. "Rossi," she repeated, charming. "Are you from one of the restaurant families?" I smiled. "My father builds things. My mother cleans things. I serve tables at Bellinata. So in a way, yes. I am from the side of the room people usually ignore." Silence, just a thin one. "Enough," Sophia's smile tightened. "How refreshing later at dinner." She tried again. "I admire America," she said to the table. "Where else could a waitress become interesting overnight?" Heat rose under my skin. I thought of my mother's hands red from cleaning chemicals. My father's knees swollen from scaffolding. My own feet bleeding in second-hand shoes. Shame came at me like an old enemy. I set down my glass. "Being a waitress taught me more about power than most people learn in private schools," I said. "People reveal themselves when they think you cannot matter. Some are kind, some are cruel, some are careless. It is a useful education." One of the older women at the table lowered her eyes to hide a smile. "Lucas did not rescue me, that mattered. He let me rescue myself after dinner." I noticed a man across the room watching us. Pale eyes, military stillness. Not admiration, assessment. Lucas followed my gaze and went rigid. "Victor Koff," he said, Russian. "What does he want? What men like him always want. More. Why is he looking at me?" Lucas' hand tightened on my waist. "Because he understands leverage." That night, when Lucas drove me home, rain covered the windows, and the city became streaks of light. "You are moving," he said. "Excuse me. Your building is not secure. My building is my home. Your home has a broken front lock, and a super who sells spare keys to anyone with cash." I turned toward him. "You checked." "Yes, that is not protection. That is surveillance. A man followed your mother yesterday." The word stopped me. "What?" "My people intercepted him, 3 blocks from her house. He had a camera." My mouth went dry. "Victor, likely you had my parents watched. Protected, without asking me." "Yes." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to do both so badly my chest hurt. That was the poison of Lucas's kind of protection. It worked. That did not make it right. The penthouse overlooked Central Park. It was beautiful, silent, and expensive enough to feel unreal. The windows did not open. I noticed that immediately. "Security glass," Lucas said. "A cage," I answered. "A cage keeps you from leaving. And this keeps others from entering." "What if I want to leave?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he placed a key card on the table. "Then leave." I stared at it. No guards stopped me. No threats. No calls to my school. No renovations. No convenient disasters. Something moved across his face. Shame. Maybe no. I picked up the card. My hand shook. "You do understand that giving me a key, after moving my life around, does not make the first part disappear. I know, do you? I am learning." It was not enough, but it was more than I expected. That night, I packed a bag. Jeans, sweaters, passport, cash, my old laptop, my law books. I stood by the elevator for 10 minutes with the key card in my hand. I could leave, technically. But where would I go? My parents were being watched by enemies they did not understand. My school was now tied to Lucas' scholarship. My old job was gone. My name had been spoken in rooms where names became currency. Freedom is not just an unlocked door. Freedom is having somewhere safe to go after you walk through it. I went back inside, not because I belonged to Lucas, because I needed power before I could truly choose. That became my private vow. I would not be carried through his world like a beautiful object. I would study it. I would understand it. Then I would decide what kind of woman survived there. The next morning, I found a small envelope on the kitchen counter. No note, no signature. Inside was my old apartment lease, paid through the end of the year, and a separate bank card in my name, with enough money to leave if I chose. I stared at it for a long time. When Lucas entered, dressed for work, I held it up. "What is this?" "A practical apology. You think money fixes coercion." "No, then why?" "Because choice needs resources." I hated that he understood the lesson so quickly. I hated that he had not understood it before he needed forgiveness. "Do not buy my freedom and expect gratitude," I said. "I expect nothing." "Good." I put the card in my bag. I did not use it, but I carried it for months. Not because I planned to run, because the weight of it reminded me that staying only mattered if leaving was possible. The next weeks were a lesson in shadows, and every lesson came with a price. I learned which businesses were clean and which were clean enough to pass inspection. I learned how shell companies worked in theory, not as an instruction, but as a warning. I learned how cash-heavy businesses could hide rot behind perfectly legal invoices. I learned how construction delays could become threats. I learned how labor disputes could be solved by law, or fear, depending on who arrived first. I learned that men who called themselves family could still exploit the poorest workers if no one forced them not to. That angered me more than the illegal things. Maybe because it was so ordinary. Violence made headlines, wage theft did not. Fear with a gun looked monstrous. Fear with a paycheck looked like business. I began pushing where I could. Real contracts for restaurant workers, insurance for kitchen staff, written agreements with vendors, legal payroll, safety compliance on construction sites. Lucas resisted at first. "You are making us visible," he said. "No," I answered. "I am making the legitimate parts actually legitimate. If your empire needs dirty kitchens and unpaid workers to survive, then it is weaker than you think." He stared at me. "Men have died for speaking to me with less disrespect. Then you need better men around you." For a second, I thought I had gone too far. Then he laughed, not loudly, not kindly, but genuinely. "Margaret warned me you would be difficult. Margaret is intelligent, so are you." Then listen, and sometimes he did. Not always, never easily, but enough. That was the beginning of our real relationship. Not the job offer, not the gala, not the penthouse, the arguments. The slow, grinding work of forcing a man raised by power to hear the difference between obedience and respect. One night, after I found financial discrepancies in a restaurant group report, I confronted him in his office. "These numbers do not match." He glanced at the papers. "They are organized differently." That is a beautiful phrase for hidden. Some things need protection. From taxes, from enemies, from corrupt inspectors, from competitors who use government offices like hired knives, and from accountability. He looked at me sharply. "Careful. No, you be careful. I studied law because men like my father get crushed. When powerful people decide, rules are optional. Do not ask me to become the kind of person I wanted to fight." He came around the desk slowly. "The law failed my father more than any criminal did. Then that is a tragedy, not a license." Silence. His jaw tightened. "You think morality is clean because you have not had to bury anyone for it, and you think survival justifies everything because no one stopped you early enough." That hit, I saw it, beneath the suit. The money, the control. Lucas was still someone's son. Someone had taught him the world could only be owned or feared. No one had taught him how to trust anything else. He turned away first. "You should go to bed." That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give without becoming cruel. I left, but later. "Outside my bedroom door," he said through the wood. "I will look at the reports." I sat on the floor on the other side. Knees pulled to my chest. "Good, Luna." "What?" "I do not know how to be the kind of man you think I should." My throat tightened. "Then start by becoming the kind of man who knows he has to try." He did not answer, but the next morning, the restaurant workers got proper contracts. It was not love yet. Not fully. It was a beginning. The first real test came from a restaurant in Queens called Via Stella, one of the smaller Santoro properties. A line cook, named Matteo, had been burned when a fryer malfunctioned. The manager wanted to pay him cash and send him home. No report. No doctor. No paperwork. He is undocumented, the manager told me when I arrived. He said it like that made Matteo less injured. I looked at the young man sitting in the back office, with his arm wrapped in a towel, face pale from pain, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. He could not have been more than 19. "Call an ambulance," I said. The manager hesitated. "Mrs. Rossi, that creates evidence," I asked. "Good. Let us create evidence that this business does not let workers suffer in silence. Mr. Santoro may not want, call him." "He did," Lucas answered on speaker. I told him what happened. There was a pause. The manager looked hopeful. Then Lucas said, "Do exactly what Luna says." After the ambulance left, the manager lowered his voice. "This is how people start asking questions." "Good," I said. "Let them ask why a business finally did the right thing." That night, Lucas found me in the penthouse kitchen, still angry, still wearing my coat. "Matteo will be treated," he said. "His wages will continue, and the manager replaced. Because he ignored safety. Because he argued with you, Lucas, and because he ignored safety." I almost smiled. "Almost. Do not make justice about me. I am making obedience about you. Justice was your argument. Then you still missed the point." He leaned against the counter. "Teach me." It was not said mockingly. That unsettled me more than resistance would have. So I told him about wage theft. About fear. About how undocumented workers can be exploited because the law exists on paper but not always in reach. I told him about my mother cleaning houses, where people praise charity, while underpaying the woman, scrubbing their floors. I told him that if he wanted loyalty, he could begin by not forcing desperate people to choose between pain and rent. Lucas listened when I finished. He said, "My father would have called that weakness." "Your father is dead," I said softly. "Do not let him keep raising you from the grave." Lucas went very still. For a moment, I thought I had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Then he looked away. He believed mercy was how enemies entered the house. Maybe, but cruelty lets them grow inside it. The next week, all Santoro restaurants received updated safety requirements, emergency reporting rules, and worker protection policies. Men grumbled, managers complained. The world did not become good because of a memo, but Matteo kept his arm, he kept his job, and 3 other workers came forward with injuries they had been hiding. That was the first time I saw how power could turn if enough pressure was applied in the right place. Around the same time, I opened a red file by accident. At least, I told myself it was by accident. The folder had been placed in my office, under a stack of lease renewals. The tab read Rivera Scaffolding. My father had worked with that company years earlier. My hands went cold. Inside were old photographs of a construction site, collapse from before I entered law school. 2 injured workers, 1 settlement. 1 note in Lucas' handwriting. Check whether Rossi was present. Rossi, my father, when Lucas came in. I was standing behind my desk, with the folder open. "What is this?" I asked. He saw the tab and his face changed. Not guilt, not exactly, recognition. "Where did you get that?" "It was in my office." "It should not have been." "That is not an answer. He closed the door years ago, before I knew you." One of my construction partners used unsafe scaffolding. A worker was hurt. Your father was on the crew, but not injured. I reviewed the matter when I learned your name. After you decided you wanted me. Yes, you investigated my father's accident history. I investigated risk. No, you investigated leverage. He did not deny it. That hurt more than a lie would have. I picked up the file and threw it at him. Papers scattered across the floor. You do not get to collect people's pain in folders and call it protection. His face hardened. In my world, knowing is protection. In mine, knowing without consent is violation. Your father could have been targeted. Then tell me. Tell me like a person, not like a man building a cage from family secrets. He bent and gathered the papers slowly. The silence stretched. "I was wrong," he said at last. Again, yes. His honesty angered me, because it left me with nothing clean to push against. "Do you understand how humiliating it is to love someone and wonder if they learned you like a case file?" His face shifted then. "Real pain. I did not learn you from files. Luna, no, you just made sure you had them." I slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, he placed every file related to my family on the dining table. Not copies. Originals. Photographs. Notes. Security reports. The lease on my old building. My school transfer paperwork. Even a background check on my mother's employers. I stood over the pile, shaking. "Burn them," he said. "What?" "Burn them. Keep them. Read them. Give them to your lawyer. They are yours. You think this fixes it? No, then why?" "Because I do not want information about your family to be power over you." I looked at him, "Then do not collect it again." "I will not without asking." "No exceptions," his jaw tightened. Men like Lucas lived by exceptions. But he said, "No exceptions." I burned most of the files in the fireplace. I kept the Rivera folder. Later I showed it to my father. He read it in silence, then he said, "I knew that scaffolding was bad." My heart hurt. "Why did you go up?" He gave me a tired smile. "Because rent was due." That answer became another lesson. People do not risk their lives because they are careless. Sometimes they risk their lives because poverty has already made the first threat. I made Lucas sit with my father the following Sunday and listen to him talk about job sites, safety shortcuts, foremen who looked away, workers who were told they were replaceable. Lucas listened without interrupting. Papa did not soften the truth. Mama served coffee like she was presiding over a court hearing. At the end, Lucas said, "I cannot change what happened before." Papa looked at him. "No, but you can make sure men who work for you come home with both hands." Lucas nodded. "I will." That promise became policy. Real inspections, better crews. No retaliation for reporting danger. It cost money, a lot of money. Lucas paid it, not because he became saintly, because sometimes love gives conscience a face, and my father's face was impossible for him to ignore. The first time gunfire entered my life, I smelled garlic before blood. Lucas had taken me to a small family-owned restaurant in Little Italy. No tourists, no glitter, just red tablecloths, framed photographs, old men playing cards near the back, and a kitchen loud enough to feel alive. I relaxed there in a way I rarely did around Lucas and associates. Maybe because the place reminded me of my childhood. Maybe because the sauce tasted like someone's grandmother still mattered. The meeting began as a discussion about a real estate deal, permits, tenant relocation, construction schedules. Then the language shifted. Docs, roots percentages, cough, respect. I understood enough to know this was not dinner. This was a border negotiation wearing a napkin. Lucas sat beside me calm as ever, one hand near his wine glass, the other resting loosely on the table. Salvatore Benedetti was across from him. 2 other men sat nearby. I was taking notes when the front door exploded inward. 4 men in dark jackets rushed in with guns drawn. Russian voices, English curses. A woman screamed, glass shattered. Lucas shoved me down so fast my shoulder struck the floor. A table overturned above me. Plates crashed. Wine spilled across white linen like blood arriving early. Stay down, Lucas hissed. His gun appeared in his hand with horrifying ease. Around the restaurant, his men reached for weapons I had not noticed. Of course I had not noticed. That was the point. I should have stayed hidden. I should have curled under the table, like every sane person in that room. But one of the attackers moved toward me, weapon lowered but ready. And something about his face pulled me backward through time. A bus stop in Queens. A boy with bruised knuckles and angry eyes. A warning from my mother to stay away from him. Because anger was contagious. Dimitri, I said. The man froze. Luna Rossi, the gun stayed up. But his face changed. Recognition cracked through the violence. What the hell are you doing with Santoro? Trying not to get shot, I said. It came out sharper than I intended. He almost laughed, almost. Lucas said my name in warning. I ignored him. I slowly pushed myself up. Hands visible, my legs shook. I made them hold. Dmitry Volkov, I said. You lived on 47th Street. His jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. Not long enough for you to forget. There are families in this restaurant. His eyes flicked to a crying woman under a table. Santoro brought this. You brought guns into a room with civilians. You do not know what he does. I know enough to know this is not justice. He laughed bitterly. Justice. You became a lawyer and still believe in that. The words cut because they were not entirely unfair. I thought of courtrooms, where poor defendants met their public defenders for 3 minutes, before hearings. I thought of landlords lying under oath. I thought of men like Lucas. Building order, where the official world left holes. I believe justice is hard, I said. That does not mean we should replace it with revenge. The standoff held. Lucas' men were positioned badly. Dimitri's men were nervous. Nervous men with guns are more dangerous than cruel ones. Cruel men aim, nervous men react. I heard myself slip into broken Russian, slow, careful words from my old roommate, words from overheard conversations, enough to show respect, enough to separate Dmitri from the others. What do you want? I asked. Not slogans, not pride. What do you want that lets everyone walk out alive? Lucas looked at me like I had lost my mind. Dmitri looked at me like I had found his. He wanted territory concessions, a percentage from certain routes, a public sign that the Russians were not weak. Lucas wanted his existing arrangements protected, his people unharmed, and no precedent of bending under attack. 2 men, 2 egos, 2 histories of being taught that backing down meant death. I stood between them and translated more than words. I translated fear into terms, pride into clauses, threats into options. My mediation professor would have fainted, or taken notes. After 20 minutes, weapons lowered, not fully, never fully, but enough. Dmitri backed toward the door. Before he left, he looked at me. You talk like a lawyer. I am trying to become a good one. Then become one, he said. This world has enough people who know how to hurt. After they left, my body realized what my mind had done. My knees gave out. Lucas caught me before I hit the floor. His hands moved over my arms. My face, my shoulders. Are you hurt? No. Did he touch you? No. Luna, his voice broke on my name. Just a fracture, but I heard it. So did Salvatore. So did every man who mattered. Lucas Santoro had shown fear. For me, that changed my value in the room. And not only in romantic ways. It made me leverage. It made me a target. It made me dangerous. The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Lucas stared out the window, but his reflection watched me. When we arrived, he poured himself a drink and did not drink it. I should have anticipated this, he said. Victor has been pushing Demetrius' people. Then why bring me? 'Cause I thought the meeting was contained. Contained, I repeated. That is a strange word for a place where people carry hidden guns. He closed his eyes. I put you in danger. Yes, he opened them. You saved lives. Yes, including mine, maybe. Do not minimize what you did. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I negotiated a criminal agreement in a restaurant while people hid under tables. That is not exactly something the Bar Association celebrates. It was extraordinary. It was wrong. It was necessary. Those can both be true. He studied me. That is why I need you. The old fear rose. Need me for what? To help me keep men alive when their pride wants them dead. That sentence should not have moved me. It did, because under the control, under the possession, under the arrogance, there was something else. A man tired of inheriting blood, but unsure how to put it down. I sat on the sofa, still shaking. If I stay in this, I need the truth. Yes, all of it. Yes, and I need a real choice. Not a door you unlock after building walls around it. He flinched. Good, you are right. I looked at him. Say that again. His mouth tightened. Do not enjoy it. I might. He came to stand in front of me. You are right. I did not give you a real choice at the beginning. I wanted you. I arranged circumstances until saying yes was easier than saying no. That was wrong. The apology landed heavily between us. It did not erase the harm. Nothing does. But accountability is the first brick in any bridge worth crossing. If you want to leave, he said, I will arrange it properly. Your parents protected. Your tuition paid through a blind scholarship. A new apartment, no retaliation, no debt. I stared at him. Why now? Because tonight I saw what you are when you choose. I do not want a woman beside me because I trapped her. I want you beside me because you looked at my world and decided you could change something in it. And if I decide I cannot, then I live with that. You would let me go. His eyes darkened. No, I would suffer it. There is a difference. I should have left just to prove I could. Maybe in another life, I did. In this one, I stayed. Not because I had forgotten the harm. Because I saw a way to turn survival into influence. And because, God help me, I was beginning to love him. Not the danger, not the money. Him, the man who remembered my mother's favorite tea after hearing it once. The man who sent my father a rare book on stone restoration, because Papa had mentioned cathedral work. The man who knocked before entering my room. The man who could terrify a room full of criminals and then ask me, quietly, whether I had eaten. Love did not make him good. I knew that, but it made him reachable. And maybe I was arrogant enough to think that mattered. After Little Italy, my role changed. Men who had treated me like Lux's pretty assistant began pausing when I spoke. Salvatore called me counselor before I had passed the bar. Margaret began giving me red files. Not all of them. Enough. I learned about roots, disputes, judges, unions, shell companies, legitimate fronts, and unofficial peace treaties. I also learned about people trapped at the edges. Drivers who did not know what they were carrying until they knew too much. Restaurant workers paid under the table because documentation was complicated and fear was convenient. Young men like Dmitri, raised in neighborhoods where power arrived only in the form of threats. The deeper I went, the less satisfied I became with simply keeping myself safe. You cannot clean all of this, Margaret warned me. I know. Do you? No, I admitted. But I know I can clean some of it. She smiled sadly. That is how idealists get killed, and how cowards stay comfortable. She laughed once. You are becoming dangerous, Luna. Good. Law school became my anchor. I studied criminal liability and thought about Dmitri. I studied professional ethics and thought about myself. I studied contracts and rewrote Santoro vendor agreements, so workers could not be cheated as easily. I studied evidence and began quietly documenting anything that could protect people if a powerful man tried to blame the powerless. I did not become innocent again. Innocence was gone, but I began to become intentional. That mattered more. One afternoon, Professor Hale said in class, the law is not only punishment, it is also a way of asking who had power, who had choice, who caused harm, and who can repair it. I wrote that down. Power, choice, harm, repair. Those 4 words became my compass. I tested every decision against them. Did this protect someone or only hide money? Did this reduce violence or delay it? Did this give a person more choice or less? Did this repair harm or simply move it onto someone weaker? Lucas hated when I asked those questions. Then he started asking them before I did. That was when I knew change had begun. Not transformation, not redemption. Those words are too clean. Change, messy, slow, incomplete. Real. Sophia hated it. She watched me gain influence and treated every step as theft from her. To her, Lucas had been an inheritance she was promised. I had not only taken the man, I had changed the rules of the room. At a private dinner for women connected to the old families, she raised her glass and said, to Luna, proof that ambition can wear an apron before it finds diamonds. A few women looked away, a few looked interested. I smiled. Ambition is not shameful, Sophia, but contempt is. I wore an apron because I worked. My mother wore gloves because she cleaned. My father wore steel-toed boots because he built. None of that made us less human than people born near chandeliers. Her face reddened, I continued, calmly, because anger is most effective when it does not shake. The mistake people make is thinking service means inferiority. It does not. It means someone had the strength to carry, what others were too comfortable to notice. Carla Benedetti, who had married into the family years earlier, lifted her glass to strength. Then others followed. Sophia lowered her eyes. She did not forget. Humiliation ferments in people who do not know how to repent. After that night, she stopped insulting me in public and began smiling too warmly. That was more dangerous, Lucas noticed. Sophia's becoming reckless, he said. She is hurt. Hurt people can still be dangerous. I know, I looked at him, so can powerful ones. He accepted that without argument, another change. A week later, Victor sent the first warning that did not look like a warning. A white orchid arrived at my office. No card, just a single blossom in a black box. Margaret saw it and went pale. Do not touch it, she said. Security took it apart. Nothing explosive. Nothing poisonous. Only a photograph folded inside the stem wrap. My mother leaving church. My father carrying groceries. On the back, one line in Russian. Even flowers have roots. Lucas did not speak for a full minute after reading the translation. Then he left the room. I found him in the garage. One hand braced against the hood of his car, breathing like a man holding back a war. Do not, I said. You do not know what I was about to do. Yes, I turned. He photographed your parents. And if you answer with blood, he learns the fastest way to make you stupid. His face hardened. Do not call me stupid. Then do not behave like a man whose enemies hold the leash. That landed harshly. I saw it. But I did not apologize. Love does not always speak softly. Sometimes love grabs the match before the house burns down. We moved my parents quietly. My mother pretended not to be frightened. My father pretended to be annoyed by the fancy safe house. But when I hugged him, he held on longer than usual. This because of him, he asked. Because of people who hate him. Same road, different lane. I could not argue. He looked at me, eyes tired. You sure you know where this road ends? No, then do not let him drive the whole way. That became another line inside me. Do not let him drive the whole way. Months passed. My life became a series of rooms where I was never fully one thing. In court, I was a law student from Queens, with strong grades and a strange network. In Lucas' office, I was an advisor. At Gallus, a bridge, in my parents' kitchen. Still their daughter. Though my mother watched me with eyes that saw too much. One Sunday, while we rolled pasta dough, she asked, "Are you happy?" Luna, I almost said yes automatically. Then I stopped. I am not unhappy. She looked at me. That is not the same. I know, are you safe? I thought of the penthouse. The guards, Lucas' hand at my back. Victor's pale eyes, safer than before in some ways. Less safe in others, Mama nodded slowly. Power is like fire, it warms a house. Or it burns it down. Do not fall in love with the flame. I pressed the rolling pin harder than necessary. I fell in love with the man holding it. Then teach him not to burn people. That was my mother. She had cleaned the houses of powerful people for 20 years. She knew exactly how small cruelty could be. She knew also that dignity had to be taught, defended, and repeated like prayer. She also knew something I was not ready to say. Lucas could love me and still harm me if I let his fear make every decision. So I began making decisions of my own. I asked Margaret for a full map of the legitimate businesses. She refused. I asked again. She refused again. I went to Lucas. If you want me to help clean this, I need to know where the dirt is. There are things you are safer not knowing. That sentence has started every injustice in history. Dramatic, accurate. He leaned back in his chair. If I show you everything, you cannot unknow it, I know. It may change how you see me. Lucas, if your love depends on my ignorance, then it is not love. He looked away. The next morning, a black binder waited on my desk. Not all the secrets, but enough. I read for 6 hours, by the time I finished. My coffee was cold and my hands were shaking. The Santoro world was not a simple criminal empire. It was a network of favors, debts, legitimate businesses, historic loyalties, community protection, tax manipulation, political relationships, old violence, and newer attempts at respectability. Some of it was worse than I had imagined. Some of it was less cartoonish, more depressingly human. People did not wake up and call themselves villains. They called themselves protectors, providers, survivors, sons. That was why they were dangerous. They believed their own reasons. When Lucas came in, I asked, "How much of this can change?" "Some." "How much do you want to change?" He did not answer quickly. "Good. Quick answers are often performances." "More than I did before you," he said. "Not enough to satisfy you." "Then we start there. Where with enough?" The proposal came without a question. Though by then, I had taught Lucas that questions mattered. He placed a diamond ring beside my coffee one morning. No music, no candles, no kneeling. Just the ring, catching sunlight. "What is this?" I asked. "A ring." "I can see that. You are already under my protection. This makes your position clear." I stared at him. That is the least romantic sentence ever spoken. "I can try again, please do." He looked uncomfortable. "Good. I want you as my wife, he said, not because it is useful, though it is, not because it protects you, though it does, because when you are not in the room, I look for you, because when I make decisions, I hear your questions before my own thoughts, because you make me angrier than anyone alive, and better than I would be without you. Throat tightened, that was almost beautiful. Almost, do not get arrogant. He smiled, too late. I picked up the ring but did not put it on. If I marry you, I will not be decorative. No, I will not be silent. God forbid, I will keep my law license clean. Yes, I will have authority over the legitimate businesses. He paused. Define authority. The kind where men who ignore me answer to you. Done. The clinic I mentioned. Legal aid, workers, immigrants, young people at risk, funded through a foundation. Independent oversight. His eyes narrowed. You want to use Santoro money to keep people out of systems like mine. Yes, he leaned back. That is bold. That is the point. Done. I blinked. Just like that. Name it after your grandmother. That undid me, not fully, but enough that I had to look away. You remembered. I remember everything about you. That sounds romantic until one remembers. You also use information as a weapon. Then let this be a tool. I slid the ring onto my finger. It was heavy, beautiful, not a chain. Not if I refused to let it become one. One more thing, I said. If you ever use my parents, my school, my safety, or our future children to force me, I will leave you in a way even you cannot repair. Lucas looked at me for a long moment. I believe you. Good, Luna. Yes, I love you. The room went silent around those words. I had wanted them. I had feared them. From Lucas. Love could become a locked door if not watched carefully. Do you know what that means, when it is not ownership? I asked. He did not look away. I am learning it was not a perfect answer, but it was true, and truth I had learned was rarer than romance. The weeks before the wedding were not peaceful. Weddings in families like Lucas's were not just celebrations. They were declarations. Every guest list became a political document. Every seating chart was a map of alliances and old insults. Every flower arrangement had to be checked. Every vendor background was reviewed. Every priest was treated with respect and suspicion. Sophia attended one planning meeting and smiled at the ring as if it had personally betrayed her. It suits you, she said. Does it? Yes. It almost makes the story believable. I looked at her. What story? That love can erase origin. I smiled. Love does not erase origin. It reveals who is ashamed of it. She leaned closer. Be careful. Luna. Women like us survive by knowing which rooms we were born for. No, I said. Women like us survive by learning who built the rooms. She laughed softly, but her eyes were wet. For the first time, I saw the grief under her cruelty. Sophia had been raised like a treaty. Her value had always been tied to where she could be placed. Lucas choosing me had not only embarrassed her, it had made her life's training feel useless. That did not excuse her, but it explained the wound. I wish explanation were protection. It is not. 2 days later, Dmitri found me outside the clinic. He stood across the street in a gray hoodie, thinner than I remembered. Eyes constantly moving, my security details shifted. I raised a hand to keep them back. Dmitri, I said, this is bad. Most of mine are. What do you want? To warn you. He glanced down the block. Victor is not done. I know. No, you know he is watching. You do not know he has someone near the family. My skin chilled. Which family? Yours or his, maybe both. Why tell me? He looked at the clinic sign. Nona Rosa Legal Aid. My cousin Nikolai came here last week. You helped his girlfriend with a landlord. We help many people. He said you treated her like she mattered. Dmitri swallowed. Victor treats everyone like they are already dead if useful. I am tired, then leave him. He laughed without humor. You think doors open that easily? No, but I know they do not open at all if no one knocks. He looked at me for a long moment, still talking, like a lawyer, trying to become a good one. Be careful. Luna, the person who smiles at you is not always on your side. Before I could ask more, he walked away. That warning sat under my skin for days. I told Lucas. He questioned everyone. Drivers, guards, caterers, staff, nothing, no proof. Only suspicion. Suspicion is exhausting because it has no shape. The wedding took place at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Every guest was screened. Every vendor checked. Every floral arrangement inspected. The city called it the social event of the season. I called it a beautiful security operation with vows. My father walked me down the aisle. His hand shook on my arm. You do not have to do this, he whispered. I looked at him. This man who had lifted stone and steel his whole life, so I could carry books instead. I know, his eyes searched mine. Then make sure he knows it too. When the doors opened, I saw Lucas at the altar. Black tuxedo, still face. Eyes fixed on me, like the cathedral had narrowed into a single path. I walked toward him with my spine straight. Not as a girl being claimed. as a woman entering a life she had negotiated with open eyes. Lucas' vows were short. Mine were shorter. I promised truth. I promised loyalty, where loyalty did not demand silence against harm. I promised to stand beside him, not beneath him. Some people shifted at that. Lucas heard every word and did not flinch. When he placed the ring on my finger, his hand was steady. Mine was not. Halfway through the reception, after the vows, after the photographs, after the first champagne toast, a guard brought Lucas an envelope. I saw his face change. Not publicly, not enough for guests, enough for me. Inside was a photograph of my parents leaving their house in Queens, taken that morning. Written across it, in black ink, were the words, "Families make kings weak." Victor Lucas' expression went empty. That was worse than anger. "No," I said. He looked at me. "He threatened your parents on our wedding day." "Yes." "I will answer, not like an animal." His eyes flashed. "Careful. You be careful. He wants to prove I make you reckless. If you react with blood tonight, he wins twice, he scares me. And he shows your men that I make you unstable." Lucas breathed hard through his nose. Around us, guests laughed and danced, unaware or pretending to be. "What do you suggest, Mrs. Santoro?" he asked. "First time, Mrs. Santoro." The name landed like a crown and a burden. "Move my parents quietly. Trace the photographer. Freeze one of Victor's shell import licenses through a regulatory complaint. Let him spend the next month answering questions from people he cannot shoot." Lucas stared, then a slow smile touched his mouth. "You are terrifying. I am practical. You are my wife." "Yes," I said. "Your wife, not your weakness." During our first dance, he leaned close. "No one touches what is mine." I pulled back. "No one touches your wife because she is a person." "Lucas, not property." His jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he would argue. Then he nodded. "No one touches my wife." It was a small correction. It mattered anyway. Words are the first laws inside a marriage. Our honeymoon was in Tuscany. Lucas owned a villa near the region where my grandmother had grown up. I walked through old streets and felt the ache of inheritance. Not his mine. Women selling bread in doorways. Men arguing over coffee. Church bells ringing across stone. For moments, I could imagine a simple life. A husband without guards. A home without security codes. A child someday who knew danger only from stories. Then Lucas' phone would ring, and the world we carried would return. One evening, we sat on a terrace while the hills turned gold. Lucas told me his great-grandfather had left Italy with nothing but hunger and a willingness to survive. He built protection because no one protected him. Lucas said, then protection became business. Business became territory. Territory became blood. "And where does it end?" I asked. He looked at me, maybe with us. That was the first time I believed he wanted change for more than my approval. Not because he suddenly became good. Men do not shed generations of violence like a coat. But he was tired. Tired of funerals disguised as loyalty. Tired of sons inheriting wars their fathers had called legacy. Tired of being feared by people he wished would trust him. When we returned to New York, I passed the bar. Lucas gave me 3 contracts. Corporate counsel for the restaurant group, legal advisor for real estate holdings, and foundation director for the legal clinic. I chose all 3, then rewrote the terms. "You negotiated your own employment contract against your husband," Margaret said, reading it. "Conflict of interest?" I asked. "No entertainment." The clinic opened in Queens under my grandmother's name. Nona Rosa Legal Aid. We helped workers recover unpaid wages. We helped tenants fight illegal evictions. We helped young men charged with small crimes before the system turned them into permanent criminals. We helped women leave dangerous homes with paperwork, safety plans, and enough money for the first week after escape. It was not glamorous, it was not clean. It was necessary. I told every volunteer the same thing. Respect is not a soft value. It is prevention. People who are treated like garbage eventually believe the world has given them permission to rot or burn. We are here to interrupt that. Some donors gave because they believed. Some gave because they wanted access to me. Some gave because Lucas looked at them once and they discovered generosity. I accepted all money under strict conditions. Transparent accounts, no interference, no favors tied to clients. Lucas found this amusing, until it saved one of his restaurants from an audit, because the payroll records were cleaner than the inspector expected. "You see," I said, "ethics can be efficient." "Do not make that a slogan," he said. "I might put it on the wall. I will deny knowing you," but he smiled. We were happy in those months. Not simple happy, not innocent happy, but real enough. We fought. We worked. We learned where the other person hurt. Lucas told me about his father, a man who believed affection softened boys into liabilities. I told him about scholarship interviews, where rich people asked me to describe adversity, like it was an essay topic and not the shape of my childhood. He learned to apologize without sending gifts first. I learned to accept protection without mistaking every gesture for control. We were building something uneven and alive. The clinic gave that life a public face. People came with eviction notices folded into purses, wage statements they did not understand, bruises hidden under sleeves, court summons that had become terrifying because no one had explained the words. One woman, Marisol, arrived with 2 children and a grocery bag of documents. Her husband had controlled every bank account, every password, every family contact. She did not ask for romance. She did not ask for rescue. She asked, "Can I leave without losing my children?" That question stayed with me. Later I told Lucas about her, without using her name. "People think leaving is a feeling," I said. "It is not, it is paperwork. Money, childcare, locks, and someone believing you before you have perfect evidence." Lucas listened from across the kitchen table. "Can the clinic help her?" "Yes." "Then double the emergency housing fund." I looked at him. "Just like that. You taught me choice needs resources. Some lessons return in unexpected ways." Around the 3rd month after our wedding, Victor began pressing from every side. A shipment delayed because an inspector suddenly developed courage or accepted money. A vendor threatened. A journalist asking questions about the foundation. A black car outside my clinic. Photographs of my parents. Then of me entering a doctor's office. Though at that time, I did not know why the doctor's office would matter later. Lucas wanted to answer with force. I pushed for documentation. "Paper first," I told him. "Always paper first. You cannot file a motion against a bullet." "No, but you can make sure the man holding the gun has nowhere clean to stand." Sophia reappeared around the same time, smiling too much. She came to charity lunches, family dinners, foundation events. She praised my dress, asked about my schedule, touched my arm like we were friends. I did not trust her, but I underestimated her pain. That was my mistake. Pain without humility becomes resentment. Resentment seeks witnesses. Victor gave her that. He made her feel seen, useful, powerful again. She did not think of herself as betraying Lucas. She thought she was correcting a humiliation. She thought she would frighten me, perhaps embarrass me, perhaps make me leave. She did not understand that men like Victor do not borrow information. They weaponize it. Then I found out I was pregnant. It was snowing that morning. The house in Westchester was quiet, the gardens white, the windows silver with frost. I stood in the marble bathroom, holding the test while a small plus sign appeared, so tiny, so absolute. Lucas found me there. He looked at my face, then at my hand. The mask fell, completely. "Luna," I nodded. "You are going to be a father." He took 1 step toward me, then stopped, as if afraid sudden movement might break the moment. I had seen him face armed men with less caution. "Our child," he whispered. I started to cry, not because I was sad, because love had just become flesh. A future had entered the room, and she was already vulnerable to every choice we had made. Lucas knelt in front of me and placed both hands gently against my stomach, though there was nothing to feel yet. "Our legacy," he said. That word frightened me, legacy. In families like his, legacy could mean wealth, history, loyalty. It could also mean enemies, silence, and blood passed down like a family recipe. That night I told him, "Our child will not inherit a cage." He looked at me across the bedroom. "No, she will have choices. I feel it, then she will have choices. Real ones, not the kind you gave me at first." Pain crossed his face. "I know. No child of ours will be taught that love means control. No. No worker in our businesses will be treated as disposable." Agreed. No family will be threatened to make a point. That one cost him. I saw it. But he said, "Agreed. And the parts of your world that can be brought into the light will be brought into the light." He looked away. "You are asking me to change a century of habits." "No. I am asking you to decide what your daughter inherits. Fear or strength." The room went still. Snow tapped softly at the window. Lucas looked back at me. "Strength." Pregnancy made the world both smaller and larger. Smaller because my body became a country with its own laws. Hunger arrived without warning. Exhaustion humbled me. Fear found new doors. Larger because every decision stretched into the future. I no longer asked, "What happens to me?" I asked, "What does this teach her?" Lucas became more protective. Sometimes sweetly, sometimes impossibly. He wanted guards at every clinic visit. I wanted one. He wanted to approve every route. I wanted to drive myself when I felt like it. He wanted me to stop meeting clients in person. I threw a pen at him. It missed. "Mostly I am pregnant," I snapped. "Not porcelain." He looked at the pen on the floor. "Did you aim to miss? Do not test me." He laughed, then stopped when he saw my face. "I am afraid." He's simple. "Honest so am," I answered. "But you do not get to make fear my prison." He nodded. We compromised. That became another kind of love. Not grand gestures, not diamonds. Compromise. Respect practiced under pressure. My mother saw through me every Sunday. While making ravioli, she asked, "Are you afraid?" "Yes, good." I looked up. She shrugged. "Fear makes mothers pay attention. Just do not let it make you cruel." My father inspected the nursery windows and complained about the installation, even though they were custom security glass. "This seal is wrong," he said. Lucas, who had paid more for those windows than most people paid for cars, listened seriously and called the contractor. Papa pretended not to be pleased. I watched them together and felt an ache I could not name. Two men from different worlds, both builders, both stubborn, both loving through tasks because feelings embarrassed them. Maybe healing did not always look like tears and speeches. Sometimes it looked like a mafia boss, letting his father-in-law criticize reinforced glass. During my 5th month, I began meeting regularly with Judge Patricia Hernandez, a federal judge interested in sentencing reform for organized crime cases. She was careful, so was I. I never betrayed secrets. But I explained structures, how low-level men often carried the risk while leaders kept distance, how poverty, immigration status, and family obligation narrowed choices before anyone committed a crime, how fear could make silence look like loyalty. Judge Hernandez listened because she cared about justice, not because she was naive. "You are walking a dangerous line, Mrs. Santoro," she told me once. "I know, why do it?" I looked down at my growing belly. "Because punishment, without understanding, creates better criminals, not better communities." She leaned back. "And you believe people can change?" I thought of Lucas, of Dimitri, of myself, yes, but not because someone loves them enough. Love is not enough. People change when love meets accountability, consequence, and a path to become useful in a better way. She wrote that down. I did not know then how important those meetings would become. Victor Koff did not disappear after the wedding or after the pregnancy announcement. He adapted, his pressure grew quiet, then precise. He did not strike like a man in a movie. He moved like mold behind a wall. A supplier who had worked with Santoro restaurants for 12 years suddenly canceled a contract. A city inspector arrived at a construction site with a television reporter 2 blocks behind him. A donor to the clinic withdrew after receiving anonymous top photographs of his teenage son leaving a club. A shipment of medical supplies for one of our emergency housing partners vanished for 3 days, and then reappeared with every box opened. Nothing large enough to justify war. Everything small enough to exhaust us. Lucas stopped sleeping well. I woke at night and found his side of the bed empty. He would be in the security room, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, watching camera feeds in silence. "Come to bed," I would say. "In a minute." That means no. That means in a minute. I would stand beside him until he looked at me. "You cannot watch every door forever." "I can try, and when our daughter is born, will you watch her breathe every second?" His face softened, then tightened. "Yes, Lucas, do not ask me to be reasonable about losing you." I touched his shoulder. "I am not asking you to be reasonable. I am asking you to be useful." That word reached him, useful. He understood usefulness better than comfort, so we built systems instead of rituals of fear. Rotating routes, limited schedule access, clinic-client confidentiality separated from Santoro security, emergency plans that did not require me to stop living. Lucas wanted a fortress, I wanted a life. We negotiated both badly, then better. In those months, Sophia came closer. She brought gifts for the baby. Small cashmere blankets, silver rattles, a music box from Florence. Each item felt thoughtful enough to make suspicion seem rude. One afternoon, she visited the clinic while I was meeting with Marisol, the woman trying to leave her abusive husband. Sophia waited in the lobby and watched people come through the doors. Workers' mothers, teenagers, men ashamed to ask for help. When I came out, she said, "You really believe this changes anything?" "Yes, one tenant at a time, one frightened girl at a time. That is how most lives happen. One at a time." She looked around. "Lucas should be building alliances, not funding your little church of lost causes. Maybe alliances built on fear need competition." Her mouth tightened. "You think you are better than us?" "No, I think being born into power can make people forget what power is for." "And what is it for, Luna?" "To protect people who cannot protect themselves. Not to decorate the pride of people who already have too much." Her eyes filled suddenly, unexpectedly. "You speak like someone who was never trained to be useful." I softened. "That was my mistake, maybe. Or maybe it was my humanity." "Sophia," I said, "being used is not the same as being useful." She looked away for a second. I thought she heard me, then her phone buzzed. She read the message, and the softness vanished. "Be careful," she said. "Women who try to change men like Lucas often become lessons." "For whom?" "Other women," she left. A week later, I learned that the music box she had brought for the nursery contained a tracking chip hidden beneath the velvet lining. Lucas wanted to drag her father from a dinner table and make the Benedetti family answer. I stopped him. She may not know. She knows enough. Then we find out how much before we burn an alliance. You are protecting her, I am protecting us from becoming predictable. He hated that I was right. We let Sophia believe the tracker had not been found. We fed it false roots for 10 days. Victor chased ghosts. During that time, Dimitri appeared again. This time he did not come to the clinic. He sent a message through Matteo, the young cook whose arm we had saved months earlier. Matteo came to my office pale and sweating. A man outside told me to give you this. He said the note had one sentence. The person who smiles at you has already opened the door. No signature. Lucas read it and looked at me. Sophia, maybe, not maybe. Lucas, if we accuse her and she runs to Victor fully, we lose the chance to use her uncertainty. You are starting to think like me. No, I said. I am starting to understand why thinking like you is useful and dangerous. That night, I invited Sophia to dinner. She arrived in white, elegant and tense. Lucas sat at the head of the table, silent as a blade. I did most of the talking. We discussed the clinic, the baby, Salvatore health, the weather in Italy. Dessert came. Coffee was poured. Then I placed the music box between us. Sophia's face did not change, but her hand stilled. Beautiful gift, I said. I thought so. Did Victor choose it? Her eyes flicked to Lucas, then back to me. I do not know what you mean. Lucas said nothing. That was more frightening than anger. I leaned forward. Sophia, listen carefully. If you wanted to embarrass me. Alpha, if you wanted to frighten me. You succeeded for about 3 minutes. If you wanted Lucas to see me as a burden, you made him more stubborn. But if you gave Victor access to my child's nursery, then you have crossed from jealousy into something you may not survive. Her face cracked. I did not know it was inside. Lucas stood. She flinched. I raised a hand, and he stopped. That mattered. She saw it. What did you tell him? I asked. Nothing important, Sophia. Her voice became small. He asked where you went. Who drove you? Which doctor? Which clinic days were regular? Lucas' chair hit the floor behind him. You gave him medical appointments. She began crying, then real tears. Useless tears, but real. I wanted him to scare you. That is all. I wanted you to understand you did not belong. I looked at her for a long time. Do you know why I do belong? Sophia, she shook her head. Because I know what it costs to stand here. You thought belonging meant being chosen. It means being responsible. Lucas' voice was cold. Leave. Sophia stood, trembling. Lucas, leave before I forget my wife is in the room. She left. I heard her sob once in the hallway. I should have felt triumph. I felt tired. Pain had made her cruel. But cruelty had still made choices. That difference mattered. We tightened everything after that. New drivers, new medical routes. No schedule access beyond Margaret and Lucas. Judge Hernandez moved our meetings to secure spaces. My parents stayed in a protected apartment that my mother hated because the kitchen had no soul. My father spent his days fixing things no one had asked him to fix. Life became smaller, but not stopped. I refused to let Victor turn my pregnancy into a waiting room for terror. I continued clinic work from home. I met clients by video. I reviewed contracts with my feet swollen on a chair. I argued with Lucas about whether a bassinet needed security glass nearby. Then, in my 7th month, Victor stopped circling and struck. On a rainy evening, after a meeting with Judge Hernandez, I left the courthouse through a side exit. My driver Marco opened the door. 2 security cars moved behind us. I was tired, hungry, and annoyed, because Isabella had spent the entire meeting kicking my ribs as if objecting to sentencing policy. 10 minutes later, Marco frowned at the rearview mirror. Second car missed the turn. My body went cold before my mind caught up. Call Lucas. He touched his earpiece. Static. The street ahead narrowed. Construction barriers on both sides. A black van moved across the intersection and stopped. Marco cursed Mrs. Santoro. Down, the first impact threw me sideways. A glass cracked. Metal screamed. I gripped my stomach and tried to breathe. Marco reached for his gun. A man opened my door. I hit him with my legal folder. Hard. The folder burst open. Papers flying into the rain like white birds. He cursed. Another man grabbed my arm. I screamed once, not from fear, from rage. A cloth covered my mouth. I held my breath as long as I could. Not long enough. The last thing I heard before the dark came was a voice saying, "Careful, she is worth nothing dead." When I woke, I was in the warehouse. My wrists were tied, my shoes were gone. My mouth tasted like chemicals. My daughter moved, and I almost sobbed from relief. Almost I forced myself to breathe. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. A trauma counselor at the clinic had taught that to clients in crisis. Fear is a body event, she had said. Calm the body enough for the mind to work. So I worked. I listened. River nearby. Diesel smell seagulls. 3 men outside the door, 1 young. Nervous. Smoker's cough. 1 pacing Russian words. Brooklyn docks, maybe, or Jersey. No, the angle of the ferry horn suggested Brooklyn. My cheek hurt, my lower back ached. No contractions. Good, evidence first. Emotion later. Victor arrived about an hour later. He looked pleased to see me awake. I decided not to give him the satisfaction of asking where I was. Mrs. Santoro, he said. I apologize for the discomfort. No, you do not. No, I do not. He told me what he wanted. Dock access, a shipping corridor, a construction contract, political names. Most of all, he wanted Lucas to bend publicly. Your husband has built his reputation on inevitability, Victor said. Men believe he cannot be forced. You will correct that belief. If your plan depends on my husband being reasonable while I am pregnant and tied up, you have not studied him well. I have studied him carefully. That is why you are here. He brought out a phone and recorded me. Tell him to give me the west route. I looked into the camera. I knew Lucas would watch every detail. My face, my breathing, my words. So I gave him a message. Victor would not understand. In Italian, I said, do not trade the house for the candle. It was something my grandmother used to say when someone risked too much for too little. Lucas knew the phrase, the house meant the west route. The candle meant me. Then I added in English. Use what I taught you, not what they expect. Victor stopped recording. What does that mean? It means you brought a gun to a paperwork fight. He slapped me. The room flashed white. My daughter kicked hard. Rage steadied me. You are very brave with women who are tied up, I said. His face changed. For a second, I thought he would hit me again. Then one of his men entered and whispered something about movement near the harbor. Victor left. The young guard stayed. He tried not to look at me. He had a face I recognized in shape, not memory, dark hair, sharp nose, eyes like Dimitri's. You are related to Dmitri Volkov, I said. He stiffened up. Brother, cousin. He regretted answering instantly. Dmitri once told me, the world had enough people who know how to hurt. The guard looked at me then. You know him. I negotiated with him in Little Italy. He walked out alive because I spoke. The guard swallowed. Young. Too young. What is your name? Nikolai, listen to me. If this goes wrong, Victor will blame you. No, yes. Men like him do not protect boys like you. They use you until the risk becomes inconvenient. His jaw tightened. You know nothing. I know men in power often call young men loyal right before they make them disposable. That landed, I saw it. I kept my voice low. Human, not pleading, you still have choices. He laughed harshly. People like us do not have choices. That is what people above you need you to believe. He looked toward the door. If I help you, I am dead. If you do not, you may still be dead, but with a worse lawyer, despite himself. He almost smiled. You are strange. I am effective. He did not untie me, but he moved a bottle of water closer with his foot. Later, when Victor returned to record another video, Nikolai stood behind him differently. Less certain, doubt is small, but small cracks break locks. Outside, the thunder came again. Tires, doors, men. Victor grabbed my arm and dragged me upright. Pain shot through my back. Smile for your husband, he hissed. The warehouse door blew open. Lucas stood in the rain beyond it. Black coat soaked, face pale with a kind of fury so controlled it looked almost calm. Men stood behind him, Santoro men. But not only Santoro men. Federal agents moved along the side entrance. Harbor police, customs officers. Victor had expected a street war. Lucas had brought the law. For one wild second, pride nearly overwhelmed fear. He had understood. Use what I taught you, not what they expect. Victor pressed his gun against my side. Call them off. Lucas did not look at him. He looked at me. Are you hurt? No, the baby, angry. His mouth moved like he almost smiled. Victor snarled. Give me the root, Santoro, or I end your bloodline here. Lucas' eyes finally shifted to Victor. You are standing in a warehouse, full of federal evidence with 3 warrants active and half your men already talking. Victor stiffened. You are bluffing. Judge Hernandez stepped into view behind the agents. Not close, not foolish, present. He is not, she said. Victor's grip tightened. I could feel his panic now. Panic is stupid. Panic looks for one dramatic move to restore control. I looked at Nikolai. Tell them, I said. Victor turned his head. 1 second, enough. I drove my heel into his foot and threw my weight sideways. It was ugly, desperate, not heroic. A pregnant woman falling with purpose. A gun. Lucas moved. Someone shouted. I hit the floor hard enough to lose breath. Arms pulled me behind a stack of crates. Lucas was there, bleeding from the shoulder. He had taken the shot meant to stop me. Are you hurt? He asked again. Because apparently, blood loss did not improve his priorities. You are bleeding, answer me. I am fine. She is moving. His eyes closed. Just 1 second. Victor was on the ground. Agents around him. Nikolai had his hands raised. Dmitri was there too, somehow, shouting in Russian for his cousin not to be stupid. I grabbed Lucas' coat. Do not kill Victor. His gaze sharpened. Luna, no. I want him alive. I want every man who followed him to see that monsters do not always become legends. Sometimes they become defendants. Lucas stared at me. Rain blew through the open warehouse doors. Sirens approached. Blood spread across his shirt. Then he nodded. As you wish. Mrs. Santoro, I almost laughed. I almost cried. Instead, I held his hand until the paramedics came. At the hospital, Lucas refused treatment until the doctor confirmed the baby's heartbeat. The nurse told him he would pass out if he kept bleeding, he said, then stitch quickly. My mother arrived like a storm in a wool coat, crossed herself, kissed my forehead, then slapped Lucas on the uninjured shoulder. You protect my daughter better, she said. Lucas lowered his head. Yes, ma'am. My father stood in the doorway, pale and silent. He looked older than he had that morning. That hurt more than the bruises. Papa, I whispered. He came to my side and took my hand. You still know where the light is? He asked. I thought of the warehouse, of Nikolai's fear, of Lucas bleeding, of Victor on the ground alive, furious, defeated by the law he thought belonged only to other people. Yes, I said, then keep walking. Sophia came the next day. Not into the room. Lucas would not allow that. She stood behind the glass in the hallway, face gray, eyes swollen, guarded by 2 Benedetti men. I asked to see her. Lucas refused. I asked again, he said. She helped put you there, and I need to look at her when I decide what kind of woman I am after it. He hated that. He let her in. Sophia stood at the foot of my bed, shaking. I did not know, she said, that he would take you, that he would hurt you. I swear. I looked at her. You knew he was dangerous. Yes, you knew I was pregnant. Her face collapsed. Yes, then what you did was not ignorance. It was arrogance. You thought you could control harm once you released it. She sobbed once. I am sorry. Do not apologize because you were caught by consequences. Apologize when you understand the harm. She covered her mouth. Lucas stood near the door, silent and lethal. What happens to me? Sophia whispered. That depends on whether you tell the truth. I said all of it. She did. Names, messages, meetings with Victor's intermediary, the tracking chip, the medical schedule, the false promise that I would only be frightened. Her confession helped prosecutors build the case. Lucas wanted exile, Salvatore wanted discipline. I wanted consequence without blood. In the end, Sophia was sent to Italy under family control, stripped of influence, money restricted, reputation quietly shattered. Some called it mercy. It was not. Mercy is soft. This was a cage made from the same social power she had once used against me. I did not enjoy it. That was important. Punishment you enjoy too much begins to change you. Isabella Maria Santoro was born 4 weeks later, after 16 hours of labor. 2 arguments with Lucas, 1 threat from my mother to fire the entire nursing staff, and a moment near dawn when I thought my body might split open from love and pain at the same time. Then she cried, small, alive. The room changed. Everything that had seemed enormous became background. Empire, fear, money, enemies, legacy. All of it fell silent before a newborn girl with dark hair and clenched fists. The nurse placed her on my chest. Warm, slippery, perfect. I became someone new again. Not softer, whiter. My heart made room for a future that did not ask permission. Lucas stood beside the bed with his arm still in a sling from the warehouse. He looked at Isabella like she was both miracle and verdict. She has your mouth, he whispered. She has your eyes, I said. Poor child. He laughed, but tears stood in his eyes. I had seen Lucas face guns without blinking. I had seen him make powerful men lower their voices. I had never seen him cry. Isabella wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, and Lucas Santoro, the most feared man in half the city, looked completely defeated. Hello, Bella, he said. I am your father. That was the moment I understood. The real story was not about being saved by a mafia boss. It was not about diamonds, danger, or a woman rising from waitress to wife. Those were only the surface. The real story was about what power does after love exposes its cost. The first weeks after Isabella's birth were quiet. In the strange way, guarded houses are quiet. Snow outside, security at the gates, flowers in every room, my mother in the kitchen. My father pretending not to cry every time Isabella yawned. Lucas walking the halls at 3 a.m, with our daughter against his chest, whispering Italian lullabies he claimed not to know. Victor's arrest dominated the news. Federal prosecutors called it a major disruption of smuggling operations tied to Russian networks. They did not mention me. Good. I did not need them to. Sophia was gone by then, sent to Italy after her confession became undeniable. Lucas wanted harsher consequences. I said no, not because I forgave her. Forgiveness is not a switch. But revenge would have taught our daughter nothing worth inheriting. Sophia had been raised to believe a woman's value came from being chosen by a powerful man. That belief had made her cruel. It had almost made her a killer. I wanted consequence without blood. Exile, loss of influence. A public story about rest abroad. Private truth. That was enough. Lucas disagreed at first. She put you in Victor's hands. Yes. She put our child at risk. Yes. And you want mercy? No. I want discipline. Mercy is for the repentant. Discipline is for us. He stared at me. You are harder than you think. No, I said. I am trying not to become easy. Easy would have been revenge. Easy would have been letting Lucas turn pain into punishment and call it love. Hard was building a different rule, while the wound was still fresh. That became the work of our marriage. Rule by rule, habit by habit, the legal clinic expanded. Nona Rosa Legal Aid became more than a small office in Queens. We added worker rights clinics, youth intervention programs, emergency housing partnerships, and a legal defense fund for low-level defendants trying to cooperate safely. Not everyone deserved a second chance in the same way. I knew that. Some people were dangerous. Some harm could not be repaired by good intentions. But many people were trapped long before they became guilty. A boy who carries one package for rent money should not be treated like the man who built the root. A mother who stays with a violent husband because she cannot afford a lawyer should not be asked why she did not simply leave. A worker without papers should not lose wages because his boss knows fear is cheaper than payroll. Respect is not sentimental. Respect is structure, is a contract, a safe place, a translator, a court notice explained in plain language, a person looking across a desk and saying, "You still matter." That was the educational value my story gave me. I had once thought justice lived in courtrooms. Now I knew justice begins earlier, in kitchens, worksites, schools, clinics, homes. In the small moments when a person is either treated like a burden or reminded they are human. I told that to every volunteer. We are not here to save people like heroes, I said. We are here to give them enough support to make their own next choice. Lucas came to the clinic once a month, officially as a donor, unofficially, because Isabella's mother demanded he see where the money went. The first time, a teenage boy named Matteo recognized him and went pale. Lucas noticed and softened his voice. "You work here now?" he asked. Matteo nodded. He had been running errands for a street crew before we got him into a restaurant training program. "Yes, sir, good." That was all Lucas said. But after we left, he told me. He looked at me like I was a sentence. For boys like him, men like you often are. Lucas was quiet. What should I have said? Next time, ask him what he wants to become. So he did the next month. Lucas asked Matteo that question. The boy stared at him, like no adult man had ever asked him anything beyond what he could carry or who he knew. "A chef," Matteo said finally. Lucas nodded, then learned properly. Pride in the work, no shortcuts. It was a small scene, no music, no tears, but I thought of Dimitri's words. This world has enough people who know how to hurt. Maybe, I thought, it also had room for people learning how not to. Lucas changed slowly, not into a saint. I would never insult either of us by claiming that. He remained dangerous. He remained strategic. He still had enemies. He still made decisions in rooms I did not always enter. But the legitimate businesses became cleaner. Payroll improved. Safety violations dropped. Disputes moved to lawyers before they moved to fists. Men, who once laughed at paperwork, began calling me, before they did something that would create a legal disaster. Margaret called it domesticated violence. I called it harm reduction. We both knew it was not enough. We both knew it was more than before. One evening, after a former associate tried to extort a restaurant manager, Lucas wanted to remove him from the city by force. "No," I said, "he threatened our employee. Then we protect the employee, document the threat, and use the law. You still believe paperwork can stop wolves?" "No, I believe if we never use the law when we can, we lose the right to complain when others do not." He paced the room. Isabella slept nearby in a bassinet, one tiny fist against her cheek. Finally, Lucas stopped. "In my father's house, restraint got people killed. Then build a different house." He looked at our daughter. The anger left him slowly. "I am trying." That sentence became more precious to me than any diamond. I am trying, not I have changed. Not trust me blindly, not forget what I was. Trying. The only honest tense for real transformation. Months later, Judge Hernandez invited me to speak privately with a committee studying community intervention and organized crime prevention. I wore a navy suit, low heels, and the gold cross. Isabella was 6 months old. I had slept 3 hours. My notes had milk stains on them. I spoke anyway. I told them that people do not leave dangerous systems because someone tells them to make better choices. They leave when better choices become reachable. Rent support, legal aid, safe employment, protection from retaliation. trauma counseling, childcare, translation, respect. A society that humiliates people and then punishes them for seeking power in the wrong places is not solving crime, I said. It is feeding it. If you want fewer young men recruited by violent crews, give them work before the crews give them identity. If you want women to leave abusive homes, give them shelter before you ask why they stayed. If you want workers to report exploitation, stop making them fear deportation more than theft. Respect is not softness, it is prevention. One councilman asked Mrs. Santoro, "Do you believe everyone can be redeemed?" I paused. No. Some people refuse every door except the one that leads to harm. But I believe more people can be redirected than we admit. And I believe accountability works better when it offers a path forward for those willing to take it. And those who are not willing, then consequences, clear ones, lawful ones. Consequence without cruelty is how society proves it is better than the violence it condemns. Afterward, Judge Hernandez said, "You speak like someone who has seen both sides of a locked door." I thought of the penthouse key card, the warehouse, my old apartment, my daughter's nursery. I have. Victor's trial became another education, not for me, for Lucas. He hated courtrooms when he was not controlling the room. He hated the slow pace, the paperwork, the objections, the way people who had done terrible things sat in clean suits and waited for language to decide their future. I made him attend one day from the back, hidden behind press and security. Nikolai testified, his voice shook. He admitted what he had done. He named what Victor ordered. He did not pretend innocence. He did not perform repentance. He simply told the truth. And the truth made him look younger. Afterward, Lucas said, he could have become Dmitri. Yes, Dmitri could have become Victor. Yes, what makes the difference? I looked at him. Sometimes one person reaching early enough, sometimes luck. Sometimes consequences arriving before cruelty becomes identity. Lucas was quiet the rest of the ride home. That night he stood over Isabella's crib for a long time. "She will not fear me," he said. "No," I answered, "she will respect you." "How do I know the difference?" I stood beside him. Fear makes children hide. Respect makes them come to you with the truth. He touched the crib rail. "And if the truth disappoints me, then you become the kind of father whose love is larger than his pride." He nodded slowly. "I am trying." I know, the christening took place at St. Patrick's Cathedral, the same cathedral where Lucas and I had married. This time, I walked in carrying my daughter, not wearing a veil but holding a future. My parents sat in the front row. Margaret stood behind them, pretending she was not emotional. Salvatore Benedetti held a cane and watched Isabella with ancient approval. Sophia was absent. Victor was awaiting sentencing. Dmitri attended quietly at the back, with Nikolai beside him. Both had entered cooperation agreements. Both were working legitimate jobs under protection. Not forgiven, not erased. Given a path. There is a difference. During the reception, Salvatore held Isabella and said, "This child will inherit an empire." I smiled and corrected him. "She will inherit a choice." The old man chuckled. "You are very American." "No," I said. "I am very much my grandmother's granddaughter." Lucas heard me from across the room. His smile held no possession, only pride. Later that night, after the guests left, after my parents went home, after Isabella finally fell asleep, I stood in the nursery, watching her breathe. The room was soft cream and pale gold, no sharp corners, reinforced windows, a rocking chair from my mother, a carved wooden shelf my father made, a tiny gold bracelet from Lucas' family that I would not let her wear until she stopped trying to eat her own fingers. Outside, guards moved through the snow. Inside, a music box played an old Italian melody. Lucas came to stand behind me. He did not touch me immediately. He had learned to wait. I reached back and took his hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "What, the life you did not have?" I kept my eyes on Isabella. Sometimes, his hand tensed. The clean office, the simple cases, the man who brought flowers and asked permission before changing everything. I breathed slowly. I mourn her sometimes. The Luna, who might have become a public defender, lived in a small apartment, married someone safe, brought my parents soup on Sundays, and never learned how many kinds of danger wear expensive watches. Lucas said nothing. She deserved more choice than she got. I added, "Yes," he said quietly. I turned to him. That yes mattered. No defense, no excuse. "But I do not regret becoming this Luna." "Why?" "Because this Luna knows what power costs. And maybe that means she can teach one child, one family, one room at a time, how to use it without becoming empty." Lucas looked toward our daughter. "You saved this family." "No," I said. I changed the question. "What question?" Before the question was always, "How do we keep power now it is?" "What is power for?" He looked at me. "And what is it for?" I touched the gold cross at my throat. To protect without owning. To lead without humiliating. to repair what fear has broken, to make sure no waitress, no worker, no frightened boy, no trapped woman, no child born into a dangerous name ever believes dignity belongs only to the rich. Lucas' arm came around me then, warm and careful. The man who once said I want her, like I was an object, now held me like a promise he was still learning to keep. That is the truth of my story. It is not clean enough for fairy tales. It is not dark enough to be only a warning. It is both. Love that begins with control must be forced to grow, or it becomes another prison. Power that refuses accountability becomes violence, even when it wears a suit and donates to charity. Protection without respect is ownership. Respect without action is decoration. And redemption, if it exists, is not a single beautiful moment. It is 1,000 hard choices made when the old way would be easier. I was Luna Rossi once, a waitress with aching feet, a law student with too many bills, a daughter of working people, a woman who believed justice lived in books because she needed to believe something did. I am Luna Santoro now, a wife, a mother, a lawyer, a woman who entered a dangerous world and refused to let danger be the only language spoken there. I was not saved by the Mafia boss. I was not destroyed by him either. I walked into his world, paid the price, found my voice, and made that world answer to it. One day, Isabella will ask about the gold cross. She will ask why guards stand outside certain doors. She will ask why some people lower their voices when her father enters a room. She will ask why her mother works late for people who cannot always pay. I will tell her the truth. Not all at once. Children deserve truth in portions they can carry. But I will tell her. I will say her father was powerful before he learned how to be careful. I will say her mother was proud before she learned how to be brave. I will say love is not proven by possession. It is proven by respect. I will say money can buy safety, but only dignity can build home. I will say no human being is beneath another because of work, poverty, fear, or past mistakes. I will say if she inherits power, she must ask every morning what that power is for, and when I give her Nona Rosa's cross, I will tell her what my grandmother told me. Keep your heart soft enough to love people, but your spine strong enough to make them respect you. That is the legacy I choose. Not the docs, not the secrets, not the old blood under old names. This, a clinic with its lights on after dark, workers paid fairly, young men offered a door before prison becomes their future, women believed before bruises become evidence, a husband learning restraint, a daughter raised with choices, a family name slowly turned away from fear. Outside our window, New York keeps glowing, beautiful, dangerous, hungry, full of people trying to survive one more night without losing themselves. I know that city now, its marble rooms, its subway platforms, its kitchens, its courtrooms, its churches, its alleys, its mothers waiting up, its fathers working through pain, its children becoming hard because no one reached them in time. I know the shadows. I also know where to place the light. Home is not a place without danger. I learned that the hard way. Home is the place where you decide what danger will make you, cruel or careful, silent or brave, owned or awake. And when Isabella sighs in her sleep, and Lucas' hand tightens gently around mine, I know my answer. Danger did not make me cruel. Love did not make me small. Power did not make me forget where I came from. I am still the girl who wiped marble tables. I am still the daughter of workers. I am still Nona Rosa's granddaughter. Only now, when men speak in rooms where lives are decided, I do not lower my eyes, I speak. And they listen. That should have been the end. For one beautiful week, I let myself believe it was. Then, on the 7th night after Isabella's christening, while snow pressed softly against the nursery windows, Margaret came to the door with an envelope in her hand. No stamp, no return address. No courier had passed the front gate. That meant someone inside had placed it there. Lucas took it first. I saw his face change before he read the words aloud. Inside was a photograph of a boy, maybe 12 years old, standing beside a stone fountain in Palermo, dark hair, gray eyes, a face too familiar to ignore. On the back, written in careful black ink, were 8 words: Santoro has another heir, and he is coming home. Lucas looked at the photograph, then at our sleeping daughter, then at me. For the first time since the warehouse, I saw fear enter his eyes before control could close the door. I took the photograph from his hand and looked at the boy's face. The old world had not finished with us. Blood rarely ended where love wanted it to. I kissed Isabella's forehead, touched the gold cross at my throat, and felt the next storm gathering beyond the glass. Then I looked at my husband and said, "Tell me everything."